This day in sports history.
Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
It's another day and another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more information and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's September 4th, and on this day in 1991, the Asterisk was finally removed from Roger Maris's home run record. The American League expanded by 2 teams prior to the start of the 1961 season, adding the Minnesota Twins and the California Angels. Well, technically that's not 100% correct. The Twins were actually the relocated Washington Senators, and then in a weird move, Major League Baseball put another team back in D.C. that was also known as the Senators. Anyway, so with 2 additional teams, the schedule needed to be expanded. Every American League team went from a 154-game schedule to a 162-game schedule in 1961. New York Yankee right fielder Roger Maris was coming off of a great year. In 1960, he hit .283 with 39 home runs, and he led the league in slugging percentage. Those numbers were good enough to earn him the American League MVP. His teammate, Mickey Mantle, was also coming off of a pretty good year, leading the league in home runs with 40, one more than Maris, and finishing second in the MVP voting. Now, those two would push each other in the newly expanded 1961 season. They traded bombs throughout the spring and into the summer, and then talk began to circulate that maybe Babe Ruth's single-season record of 60 homers was in trouble. On July 17th, Commissioner Ford Frick said that Ruth's record would stand unless a player topped 60 in 154 games or less. At the 154-game mark of the 61 season, Maris had 59 home runs. He hit number 60 in Game 158 on September 26th, and then his 61st on the final day of the regular season. Even though Maris's record of 61 homers was added to the Major League Record Book, a notation was attached to it indicating Ruth's 60 was hit in 154 games and Maris's mark achieved in 162. Now, there was never an asterisk. An asterisk had been suggested by a sports writer, but no such mark was ever added to the record book. But this has always been called the asterisk, so I'm going to stay with that theme to avoid confusion. But the notation was a slight to Maris. He said, "I didn't make the schedule, and do you know any other records that have been broken since the 162-game schedule that have an asterisk? I don't." The notation stayed for nearly a full 30 years until an 8-member panel that included Commissioner Fay Vincent voted to remove it. Vincent said the motivation came after a column was published written by well-known baseball writer Roger Angell in May of '91. In that article, Angell echoed what Maris had said 30 years earlier, noting that it was curious that numerous other seasonal records that have been established since the beginning of the 162-game season, including stolen bases, at-bats, and pitchers' strikeouts, do not bear, as Angell called it, the ugly tick. When Vincent made the announcement, he said, "This decision does not diminish or demean the contributions of Babe Ruth to the game of baseball. He is surely the most famous player in the history of the game, and will remain so for generations to come. This change allows Roger Maris to receive the recognition he deserves." Unfortunately for Roger, it came too late for him to actually enjoy it. Maris died in December 1985. 6 years prior, at the age of 51. On this day in 1993, the one-handed Jim Abbott pitched a no-hitter. Abbott, of course, had adapted to having only one hand from as early as he could remember. Abbott had resisted his parents' suggestion for a prosthetic. He also had no desire to play soccer, which is what his parents suggested he do. His passions were baseball and football. In high school, he played quarterback on the football team and led his Flint, Michigan team to the state finals. As a prep pitcher, he was dominant, perfecting his technique of throwing with his left hand, slipping the glove from his right arm to his left hand, ready to field any ball hit to him. There was one game in high school when the opposing team bunted 8 consecutive times, thinking that only having one arm would make it tough for him to field a bunt and throw to first. Abbott gunned down 7 of them. He jumped straight from the University of Michigan to the majors, one of the few players who actually bypassed the minor leagues. So he had a way of proving people wrong and exceeding folks' expectations throughout his life. In '93, though, he was struggling a little bit. His previous outing on the road went so poorly, he left the locker room early after being pulled to go on a 3-mile punishment run. His ERA had ballooned to 4.31, and he was 9-11 on the season. He wasn't exactly in the tank, but he was finding his seat on the struggle bus. But he managed to disembark on this night. The Yankees were at home against a heavy-hitting Cleveland Indians team that featured Albert Bell, Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome, and others. A leadoff walk to Kenny Lofton wasn't a great sign that something memorable was about to happen, but it also wasn't a portent of doom. But he settled down. He wasn't overpowering, he was letting his defense do the work. He gave up 5 walks and struck out just 3 on the night. By the 7th inning, his teammates had stopped talking to him and gave him a wide berth on the bench, as is custom when a pitcher is closing in on a no-hitter. In the 9th, he was facing the top of the order. After Lofton tried to bunt his way to first a couple of times under a cascade of boos from Yankees fans, he grounded out to second. A 390-foot warning track shot by Felix Fermin sent a shiver through the 27,000 at Yankee Stadium, but Bernie Williams tracked it down. And then when Carlos Baerga grounded out to short, the celebration was on. It was just the 8th no-hitter thrown in Yankees history, and the first in the major leagues by a man with one hand. If you're still bummed that the Summer Olympics are no longer around, and equally bummed that gymnast Jordan Childs' bronze medal was stripped, let's go back to this day in 1972 to what happened to another American whose medal got taken away. Rick DeMont was a 16-year-old swimmer for the U.S. Olympic team. He had won gold in the 400-meter freestyle a few days earlier, and he was getting ready for the 1,500-meter prelims when he got some really bad news. His drug test came back positive for ephedrine, which was on the IOC list of banned substances. But here's the thing. DeMont had been truthful about the medications he was taking. He had been taking Marax, which contained ephedrine, since he was a kid, and included it on his official Olympic forms. Fault seemed to lie with the American team doctors who failed to clear the medication with the Olympic Medical Committee. It was poorly handled, and it cost DeMont his medal. His gold was stripped on this day in 1972. Of course, the thought might be, well, he was 16, surely he came back in 76. He tried, but he didn't make the team that went to Montreal. And he was working himself back in 79, but the U.S. boycott of the Moscow Olympics would have derailed his plans even if he had gotten that far. There have been efforts made for the past 50 years appealing the Olympic Committee's decision on behalf of DeMont, but so far, all appeals have been denied. On this day in 1999, it was a long shot in the WNBA Finals that actually won the game. The New York Liberty were in the finals against the Houston Comets. This was Game 2 of a best-of-3 series, with the Comets winning the first game. Houston looked like they were closing the series out at home when Tina Thompson knocked down a bucket to give the Comets a 2-point advantage with just 2.4 seconds left on the clock. The Liberty were out of timeouts, and so inbounded the ball immediately. Teresa Weatherspoon got the ball, and this happened.
Liberty out of timeouts. They've got to go the length of the floor. Teresa Weatherspoon at the buzzer, a 3. She put it in! She put it in! And the Liberty win game two! What a finish! Unbelievable here at the Compaq Center! This crowd is absolutely stunned!
When it left my hand, I knew it was good. As soon as it left my hand, it just looked as if it was good, and I was just praying that it went in. We just fought. We fought against such a great basketball team, and it says a lot about this team with a lot of heart and desire to win.
It was one of the most dramatic shots in championship basketball history. A game winner from beyond half court to extend a series. But the Liberty's exuberance would be short-lived. Houston won Game 3 to win their third WNBA championship. And on this day in 1983, Greg LeMond became the first American man to win the men's world championship road race. This was 3 years before his first Grand Tour win in the Tour de France, but he had already racked up several important wins, including a win in the domestic Coors Classic in 1981. In the 1982 World Championship race, he'd been chased down and nipped at the line, and he vowed to not let that happen again. So on this day, he broke away from the field on the hilly Altenrhein course and won by more than a minute over 4 other riders. He would use his success in this race to put him in position to ride the Grand Tours beginning in 1984 and later becoming a 3-time winner of the Tour de France. And time now for today's non-sports fun fact. In 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio detected a strong narrow-band radio signal that lasted for 72 seconds. That signal was so unusual that the researcher who discovered it wrote "wow" on the printout. To this day, no one knows what that "wow" signal was caused by. That's it for today. If today's episode made you say wow at any point, then go ahead, leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. This and every episode of This Day in Sports History is researched, written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve White. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.